Oppenheimer is directed by Christopher Nolan and stars Cillian Murphy as the title character, along with Florence Pugh, Robert Downey Jr., Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, and a whole bunch of other people. And it's a biopic on J. Robert Oppenheimer, who is known as the father of the atomic bomb, and it covers the period of his life when he was on the Los Alamos Project and the famous Trinity test. Let's just get this out of the way. Obviously, I haven't been on this channel since the end of last year, and over the past few months, I've kind of been waiting for the right opportunity to get back on here and make videos again. And honestly, if I'm going to talk about any movie this summer, this is it. In terms of my love of film and initially getting into filmmaking when I was really young, Christopher Nolan has probably had a bigger impact on me than any other film director. I still remember watching the TV edited version of Batman Begins when I was 11 years old. That was the first of his movies that I had seen. And just being absolutely blown away by it, and just, it was like one of those times where I realized what movies could do. I didn't even know movies could be that good when I was 11. And after that, I began to watch more of his films and got more and more interested in filmmaking as an art form. So probably more than any other director, I can credit him for helping me discover my love of movies. And he's honestly one of my favorite filmmakers even today. However, I will say that his last few films I have had issues with. Interstellar is obviously an amazing cinematic experience. You can talk about the visuals, the score, the directing all day. But to this day, I still feel like that movie's a little bit too complex for its own good, and the narrative kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Dunkirk is a really great thriller and kind of just puts you in the experience of a soldier during World War I. I still think it's a really immersive movie. But there's very little characterization in it, and I kind of wanted a little bit more emotional involvement from it. And Tenet, while an amazing action movie with some really well choreographed fight scenes and action sequences, there's just no understanding that movie, no matter how many times you watch it, and there's such a lack of characterization. The main character's name is literally protagonist. With all that being said, I've enjoyed his last few films, but I've always kind of been waiting for that return to form for Nolan, where he kind of gets back to his roots and does things that are a little bit more down to earth and character driven and focused. And obviously Nolan's never going to work on a small movie, but I always wanted to see him get back to a little bit more of a smaller scale in terms of what he's capable of. And to me, Oppenheimer does just that. I've seen the movie 3 times now, and I've had a little bit of time to think about this, but I honestly think this is his best film since Inception. What's really amazing about this movie is that it's 3 hours long, and it's essentially just people having conversations, sitting in rooms, talking, save for like 1 or 2 sequences. But Nolan directs and writes with such energy to the point where when you watch these scenes, they feel just as entertaining as if you're watching an action scene. It kind of reminds me of, when you watch films like The Social Network and how a lot of that movie is just people talking. But Aaron Sorkin's writing is so engaging, and the way the movie's shot and directed. The movie is extremely dense, and they pack so much information into that runtime. But like I said, I've seen the movie 3 times now, and I haven't been bored for a single scene each time I've watched it. I will say this is a film that you're probably going to need to watch more than once in order to retain everything, because like I said, it's 3 hours long. It moves at a lightning pace. It never really slows down. So the idea that you're going to understand everything on first viewing is just not really possible. I've seen it a few times, and I still feel like I haven't really picked up on everything the movie's trying to say. On that same note, though, I never felt like I was being overloaded with information, probably because I was just so entertained by everything I was watching. And a big part of that is Jennifer Lame's editing. I think she's one of the best editors working today. I probably haven't really talked much about this on here, but I'm trying to break into the film industry one day as an editor for film and television, and Jennifer Lame is someone who I really look up to. She also worked with Christopher Nolan on Tenet, and she just does such a great job here. Every single conversation feels like it moves at a really good pace, but you're also getting all of the information you need in just the right amount of time. But a huge part of why this movie works as well as it does is because of the performances all across the board. They're fantastic, but Cillian Murphy in particular, he knocked it out of the park here. It's a very understated performance. Throughout like 99% of the movie, he's just talking very quietly or in like a very normal tone. It never feels like he's going for this big Oscar moment, but it's just his facial expressions where you can read 1,000 different things on his face. And that's where he does such an amazing job. I thought he captured this character beautifully. And it's also really cool to see him getting a lead role in a Nolan film. He's worked with him several times in the past, like in the Dark Knight trilogy. But here he's finally getting his big lead role. Robert Downey Jr. here does some of his best work in decades. This is another performance that was really cool to see because obviously we all love Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. He was born to play that character. But because he's been so committed to the MCU for so long, he hasn't really been able to lean into those dramatic roles that he used to do. And if you watch some of his stuff from the 90s and the early 2000s, like Chaplin or Zodiac or Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, the guy's a really great dramatic actor, and I've wanted to see him get back into roles like that for a long time. And here he got to do that, and he does a masterful job. I just thought he was really incredible here. He has a couple of standout moments that I think are some of the best in the whole film. And I would definitely not be shocked if he's nominated for an Oscar, and he could probably win. The whole supporting cast is great as well. Florence Pugh doesn't have a ton of screen time here, but she does have a few scenes where I thought she was really great. Matt Damon shows up and does a really great job. He kind of has a more entertaining presence in the film and serves as some of the comic relief in a few scenes. Emily Blunt also I thought was really good, and she almost fell into the trope of this wife in a biopic kind of role where, you know, she's kind of brushed off to the side and not really given a lot of characterization. But then in the third act, she has this monologue that's really impressive and almost one of the best moments in the film, I would say. I should probably also say that this is one of the most insane ensemble casts that I've ever seen assembled for a movie. There's so many people in this movie, and some that just pop up for like one or two scenes, that I could honestly spend the entire rest of this video just listing off the entire names of everybody in the cast. And I think that's really a testament to how much a lot of these stars want to work with Christopher Nolan. But I also think Nolan's kind of trying to play with our expectations and taking these people that we know in some capacity and that are noteworthy to us, and then using them to play these figures in Oppenheimer's story and in his life that were noteworthy to him and, you know, in the creation of the atomic bomb, which I just feel like he's playing with our expectations in a really interesting way here. I probably don't even need to say this at this point, but I'm going to anyway. On a technical level, this movie is flawless. Hoyte van Hoytema, Nolan's cinematographer, who also shot Dunkirk, Interstellar, and Tenet. He shot this movie beautifully. I had the privilege of seeing it twice in 70mm IMAX film, and every single frame just looked glorious on that screen. And also, Nolan's been on record saying that there's not a single shot that uses CGI in the entire film. So that means they did everything in camera. And if that's the case, I genuinely don't know how they shot some of this stuff, because that is just astounding. The score by Ludwig Göransson is really good. He's slowly becoming one of my favorite composers of this generation. But the movie also does this thing where like 90% of it has music playing in the background, and that really adds to the feel and kind of keeps the movie going at this lightning pace. Also, the narrative of the movie really surprised me. I guess this might be getting into mild spoilers if you don't want to know the structure of the movie. It has been out for 2 weeks now, so I'll give you that warning just if you don't want to know anything going in, but I'm going to talk about some of the narrative beats of the film. I kind of expected the climax of this movie to be the Trinity test, and then maybe have some resolution to see what happened after that, and then just kind of end right there. But the Trinity test happens, and then there's like another hour of this movie where it almost turns into like this courtroom drama and political thriller of sorts, but it never lost interest for me. And the movie has this really interesting way of building up to this event like it's this incredible achievement in human history and scientific history. And then the last third of it kind of deconstructs it and presents all these really great moral and philosophical questions about, you know, was this actually a good thing, or did it kind of open this Pandora's box and do more harm than good in the long run? And the way Cillian Murphy portrays the guilt and the regret about what he's done, that's one of my favorite things about this movie. How it's so entertaining and it keeps you engaged for the entire time, but it's also kind of haunting, and it'll definitely stick with you for a long time after you watch it. I'm just so glad Christopher Nolan is still making movies like this. It's a 3-hour-long biopic that's rated R, which also he hasn't made an R-rated movie since Insomnia, like 20 years ago. And the fact that Universal actually was willing to put it out for $100 million we don't really see stuff like that anymore. And he's one of the only people that's still doing stuff like that. We just don't get a lot of stuff like this nowadays. And as far as I'm concerned, Christopher Nolan just made one of his absolute best films. If it wasn't clear already, I highly encourage you to go check out Oppenheimer and see it on the biggest screen you can find. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Oppenheimer. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm hoping to get back on here at least semi-regularly. I have a little bit of more time now to be able to, make videos again. So I want to take advantage of that. I might just start, putting out a video whenever there's something to talk about or something that I feel like talking about. Maybe I'll do a video on Barbie. I don't know. We'll see. But in the meantime, if you guys have seen Oppenheimer, let me know your thoughts about it down in the comments below. And what's your favorite Christopher Nolan movie? I still think mine is probably The Dark Knight, but it's definitely open for discussion. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.